So welcome to the Administration and Public Works Committee. Today is Monday, January 10th, 2022. We are meeting virtually, of course. And so I think all I need to say is that in accordance with an executive order issued by Governor J.B. Pritzker, this APW committee is being held remotely. And I believe we have a quorum, but we'll do a voice roll call. A roll call just to be sure of it.
Councilmember Kelly. Councilmember Braithwaite. Councilmember Newsma.
Here.
Councilmember Burns.
Here.
Councilmember Reed.
Here.
All right.
Councilmember Kelly.
Is she here now?
She's here now, yes.
Is she here? Okay. So we have a quorum. Next up, approval of minutes of the regular Administration and Public Works Committee from December 13th, 2021. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion. Councilmember Newsma.
Second, Councilmember Reed.
All right. The minutes were moved by Councilmember Newsma, seconded by Councilmember Reed. Any discussion? All right. We can call the vote.
Councilmember Kelly.
Yes.
Councilmember Newsma.
Aye.
Councilmember Burns.
Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
Aye.
All right. Do we have any?
Mr. Chair, I'm noticing that Councilmember Braithwaite is just connecting.
Oh. Councilmember Braithwaite, we were just approving the minutes. Are you and I?
Yep,
I think you still have to vote. Are you aye?
Yes, I'm actually still driving, so I didn't want to miss anything going into council. So I'm just going to stay on. I'm going to stay on mute, and you can just move past me.
Okay.
All
yes,
right.
Sir. Public comment.
There is one person for comment, Francine Allen.
Perfect. We will have Francine provide her public comment right before her agenda item comes up, which I believe is towards the end. Is that under new business?
It is the last item on the agenda, the discussion item.
Thank you.
Perfect. Yeah, Francine, we'll have you speak. We have the presentation of items for discussion, sewer service repair costs. So before the conclusion of this meeting, we'll have you speak and then we'll discuss your matter, if that's
Great.
okay.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Okay. Next up, the consent calendar. Would any council members like to remove any items from the consent agenda?
And that's for items A1 through A9 are on consent.
Okay, can you just give me one moment? It's all of A?
Sorry?
Is it all of A? All sections?
A1 through A9.
Okay. Okay.
Are we good to go?
Good to go.
Okay, going once, going twice. Not hearing anything. So we're good. Can someone move the consent agenda calendar then?
I'll move the consent agenda.
I will second.
All right, any discussion? All right, seeing none. Let's vote.
Councilmember Kelly,
Aye.
Councilmember Braithwaite,
Aye.
Councilmember Nusma,
Aye.
Councilmember Burns.
Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
Aye.
All right, so we just moved and passed the consent agenda calendar items A through A9, A1 through A9, and now items for consideration, starting with A10, Resolution 1-R-22, authorizing the city manager to sign a professional services parking agreement with Passport Labs, Inc. Can someone motion for approval of item A10?
Mr. Chair, I will move item number A10, Resolution 1-R22, authorizing the city manager to sign a professional services parking agreement with Passport Labs with an amount not to exceed $450,000.
All right, item A10 moved by Councilmember Nusma. Any a second?
Second.
All right, seconded by Councilmember Reed. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, can we call the vote, please?
Councilmember Kelly,
Aye.
Councilmember Braithwaite,
I think you said to skip past him because he's driving.
Councilmember Nusma,
Aye.
Councilmember Burns.
Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
All right, next up, item A11. Can someone read motion approval of item A11?
I'll move.
Approve.
Sorry, go ahead, Councilmember Reed.
Yeah, I move approval.
So Councilman Reed has moved approval of item A11 resolution to forgive the remaining balance of lead service line loans awarded to 36 community members during 2018, 2019, 2020, and 2021 in conjunction with the annual water main improvement project.
I will second that.
Perfect. And seconded by, moved by Councilmember Reed, seconded by Councilmember Nusma. Is there any discussion? All right, seeing none, we will vote.
Councilmember Kelly,
Aye.
Councilmember Braithwaite, Councilmember Nusma,
Aye.
Councilmember Burns,
Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
Aye.
All right, item A12. Can someone move approval of item A12, please?
Move approval of item A12.
And I will second.
So, Chair, I'm just curious, why weren't these items approved on the consent agenda?
Staff had been asked to make resolutions and ordinances items of consideration rather than on the consent agenda.
Okay.
But I believe these will go to council for action as resolutions this evening.
That is correct.
So Councilmember Reed has moved item A12, and it was seconded by Councilmember Nusma, authorizing the city manager to participate in the 2022 Cook County No Cash Bid Program to allow the city to acquire property in Evanston for redevelopment. Any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I do have some questions.
Yes, sir. You have the floor, Councilmember.
Yeah.
Nusma.
So these were at least partially answered in the document I circulated earlier today, which the colleagues on this call may or may not have yet had a chance to look at. But I was wondering if Ms. Flax and Ms. Knight, and if they're on the call, if they could just give us the background for this property acquisition. Is this something that is part of a strategic plan, or is this an opportunistic acquisition that just is able to support some of our strategic priorities? Like, what is driving this process?
I'll jump in. Good evening, Johanna Neiden, Community Development Director, and Sarah will probably finish my comments. This has been part of a larger plan in terms of the West Evanston master plan, the TIF district that was established many years ago, the West Evanston TIF. Look at these underutilized, very challenging parcels because they're long and skinny and don't really hold much development potential to a private developer or private entity. They are more useful to the things that we might want to do: expansion of parks, acquisition of other properties adjacent to the high school owns a property nearby. I mean, bigger picture planning opportunities exist with these parcels. Sarah, anything to add there?
That's especially true for the parcel at the corner of Dodge and Lake. The other parcel, 2020 Green Bay Road, is a property that might be described by some people as a zombie property. There are so many fees and fines and things piled up on it. It is impractical to actually get back into use based on the tax liens and things that exist. And it has sat for quite some time. It is a non-conforming lot, and it is an ideal candidate for us to have a small home developed on for sale that could either be done through ETHS Geometry and Construction or one of our other builders who's very interested in small, modest homes that will help build that missing middle of housing.
Would we inherit any financial liabilities if we acquire these properties?
No, what happens when you acquire these through the no cash bid program, all of the back taxes and liens are waived. The one thing you can't do is use this process to waive back taxes and give it back to the people who originally owned the property and who are responsible for them.
Got it. So we would basically be acquiring these properties for the cost of paperwork.
Yes, and we've done this with, or at least we've initiated this process with 1805 Church Street was a no cash bid property, which we ultimately wound up doing a deed in lieu, but that was, they accomplished the same thing, but we work on either one. We got 1804 Emerson this way. That has become the site of an ETHS Geometry and Construction house. And we've gotten 1, 2, 3, 4 other parcels of the Mayfair right-of-way this way. And they are properties that are undevelopable unless they can be aggregated and the tax liens can be removed.
Right. And so other than essentially not giving the property back to the current owner, are there any other restrictions on how we might use or dispose of this property?
Well, what we do is we say, based on our plans, to Cook County what our intended uses are. And for the one, we've said our intended use is affordable housing. That's for 2020 Green Bay Road. And for the other parcel, we've said it would likely be a combination of green space and affordable housing, following the planning documents for that part of town.
Are we then obligated to use it for those stated purposes, or do we have future flexibility should the need arise?
We have some flexibility. Of course, it has to meet our zoning too. But we basically what the purpose of this is to get the properties back into productive use, either as something that we, the city, may do that would be a public use. And there's, I'll give you an example of a parcel further north along this railroad right-of-way that we already acquired that we are looking to put a bike and pedestrian access through where Davis Street is blocked, and to open that up for accessibility and also to keep our ETHS students from going across that berm and getting into all kinds of mischief. But also, some of the property up in that area is proximate to Mason Park, and so how could it be redeveloped for more green space or more usable park? So those are the types of things we look at. We can use it for a public use, or we can get it back into use for a private use, like housing that would put it back on the tax rolls and benefit all of the taxing bodies that didn't get the taxes from it.
In which case, we would sell that property to a private entity. And
Yes, or
receive-
we would donate it for affordable housing
Or-
and then put it, and use that to leverage additional. But
Yeah.
it would ultimately
Understood.
pay taxes. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I like both of the uses that we're contemplating here, affordable housing and green space. There's some, high-level conceptual plans about how to turn that Mayfair right-of-way into a really cool kind of multi-use trail. So, maybe we can follow up on that separately. I'd be interested to hear from the council members in whose wards these two properties are located. Councilmember Burns and Councilmember Braithwaite, you guys are on board with this?
Yeah, absolutely. I can speak for the property in the Fifth Ward. Although this work started under previous administrations, it remains a focus of mine and the community to make sure that this underutilized land, as Sarah put it, is in productive use. Oftentimes in neighborhoods that are in earlier stages of redevelopment, land just sits for far too long and it's not productive. And the only thing that happens is property owners kind of hang on to it. Many of them fall into some type of debt or lien situation. And so this is a wonderful way that the city can gain control over the property, but it doesn't cost us anything, on the city's end. And once we have it, we can partner with, an affordable housing developer if we so choose to, or move forward on plans that have been attempted in the past that were difficult to do because we didn't have site control. So most of that Mayfair line at one point was owned by, probably 5 or 10 owners, and slowly but surely the city of Evanston is becoming a primary owner of most of that Mayfair line, and there's conversations to try to get some of the other parcels that still are privately owned. So this is good news for sure.
Great.
And just to add my 2 cents, no, you're correct. This discussion has been going on over a couple of administrations. And the one thing I would remind you, Council Member Nusma, if you were to drive by the Lake and Dodge site as it travels back, it is it's contiguous with the power lines.
Yeah.
So the conversation becomes more relevant that we started last month with Dave and the utility boards to explore, ways to bury those lines to make that land to create more opportunities for the land to be developed is basically all I'm saying. So we're moving in the right direction with this vote.
Got it. Thank you both. I have nothing further, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Councilmember Nusma. Any other discussion around this item?
Yeah.
Councilmember Kelly has her hand raised.
Councilmember Kelly, you have the floor.
So these are all foreclosure properties?
They're not foreclosures. They are properties with unpaid taxes from multiple years.
And so how many like properties do we have our eyes on that are in this sort of total, that are in this situation?
Well, these are the only 2 that Cook County produces a list of properties that we have an opportunity to look at, and you get some of the weirdest parcels that show up on that list that are not really things that we would go after because they're not anything we could they aren't parcels we could do anything with. One of the most common ones is individual deeded parking spaces with buildings that just get lost in the, so you get all kinds of weird things. There are some really bizarre slivers of alleys that have been vacated that, somebody owns and things like that. When they're in a community as old as ours, there are some of the weirdest parcels that exist, but these are ones that the city has had specific goals that would benefit the community. And the properties are pretty much undevelopable as they exist, either because of the amount of the tax liens, which is especially huge on the 2020 Green Bay Road one, or it's because they're inaccessible. And that's one of the big problems of the railroad right of way. It runs at a diagonal and most of the parcels don't have access to any way and can't be developed. And as Councilmember Braithwaite said, also have these power lines running over them, which make them not developable for all sorts of things unless that's dealt with as well. So it becomes an opportunity for the city to undertake making it developable and getting it back into productive use.
So these are all vacant?
Yes,
right?
It's all vacant land, absolutely.
Vacant. And can I ask who owns them, or is?
The owner of because there's an owner of record. The owner of record, if you look at the tax information for 2020 Brown, is no longer the owner of record. That person passed away, and her son is the owner, and his name is Mr. Stevens. We have already demolished the house with his permission a number of years ago because there was a house on it that was in very bad shape that was a blighted property. And we've had discussions with him off and on about doing a deed in lieu of foreclosure, and he has come and gone on his interest in that, but the property tends to just sit there. The other property is owned by Manchester Realty, and we have worked with them on some of the other parcels that I was just describing to actually get possession for the city.
Okay. And is there anything, what are the guarantees that this isn't, I'm concerned obviously about, changing the nature and dynamics of this part of Evanston. Like Councilmember Newsmith said, I also like the idea of affordable housing and green space. What guarantees do we have? Because you said basically there is no guarantee that this is what it will become, correct?
Well, the city, if the city gets possession, obviously our first thing would be to develop it in the ways we've talked about. When Councilmember Newsma was asking if we were absolutely limited to that, no, we could go back to Cook County and say we're going to develop it in this way instead.
Well, right,
Cook County wants to get it developed. And the green space and affordable housing were elements of the West Evanston master plan that we are following.
And just quickly to try to button this up, so it sounds like restricted in some ways, or not necessarily restricted, but committed in some ways to what we've told Cook County on how we're going to use the space. Committed in another way from the West Side Master Plan that was done some years ago that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sarah, but called for this site to be developed into affordable housing even then. So committed in that way. And then also, as Sarah mentioned, committed, restricted by zoning. As I've described before to my community, there is already really restrictive zoning in the Fifth Ward, and certain projects that people believe were stalled because of because of community pressure, actually would have stalled eventually because of zoning. They would have had to go in front of the council at some point to get approval. And if the community wasn't supportive of the project, they likely wouldn't get that approval. But we already have really restrictive zoning in the Fifth Ward. So I just wanted to kind of summarize what's going on in this particular parcel. And I think if I'm thinking about the right parcel near Simpson, it's also a brownfield site. So it's contaminated to some degree. And then because it's unimproved, I've canvassed that area myself and seen, big rebar sticking out from the ground, and one of these areas is a cut-through path for young people, so it's certainly a hazardous area. And then also because it's an open field, unimproved, with no with no monitoring, also a lot of people dump stuff there, so it's a site for fly dumping, which has been a challenge for us. Councilmember Kelly, I'm going to go back to you to see if you had any other questions.
No, I think that's it. I was a little bit, some concerns when you mentioned the burn behind the parking lots at the high school, which is pretty much kind of nice, wild green space. What the idea is what the thoughts are about that area when you were saying you kind of wanted to, it sounded like you want to get rid of that.
Councilmember Kelly, there's the West Evanston plan, the sub-area plan for that area, details out a connection through Davis. So the area by Mason Park to reconnect to Dodge. So you'd have pedestrian and bike traffic to go over there. So people could travel safely. It would be ADA accessible. So it wouldn't just be for people who can walk over that berm. And I think keeping that area green and maintained, there were safety concerns. I recall when that process went through years ago, safety concerns that some of that nicely wild area landscape isn't really landscaped, and people can get into some areas that don't necessarily promote a safer space for people to spend time in that area. So I can send that to the group if you'd like to see the plan. It's the plan on record for this area. So people have.
So it would be a green. It would continue to be a green space, though.
That's what the plan. That's what the plan. If that, there would be a whole other process for procuring and doing that work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. As long as that continues to be a green space, that would be my concern. I think the most dangerous part about there is the barbed fence at the high school at the back parking lot. I've seen many accidents from the barbed. Yeah.
A note, having actually gotten up on that, because at the last time when we applied for no cash bid, we had to send pictures of it. There are a great many invasive species of trees, largely buckthorn and tree of heaven in that. So it is not pristine woodland, I can assure you. It's also because it was a railroad. Along that right of way, the railroad itself create some contaminants, and then there are also, not in this area because it wasn't developed, but in some other parts there were industrial uses that Councilmember Burns was referencing that require cleanup.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, that assures me. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I think we're ready for a vote on item A12, and I'll just read it again because we've had a good discussion on it. Authorizing Resolution 3-R-22, authorizing the city manager to participate in the 2022 Cook County No Cash Bid Program to allow the city to acquire property in Evanston for redevelopment. Can we have a vote, please?
Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
Councilmember Braithwaite.
Aye.
Councilmember Nusma.
Aye.
Councilmember Burns.
Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
Aye.
All right, can someone move approval of item A13?
Mr. Chair, I move approval of item A13, Resolution 4-R-22, expressing official intent regarding expenditures from the funds of the City of Evanston, Cook County, Illinois, to be reimbursed from proceeds of obligations to be issued by the City of Evanston.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All right, moved by Councilmember Nusma, seconded by Councilmember Reed. Any discussion?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. Let me just pull it up here. One moment. Someone else can go before me while I'm locating it.
Anybody else have questions besides Councilmember Kelly, who was preparing her remarks?
My questions were answered by email, which was shared with the council earlier today.
Okay. So I guess I have a question. So if these funds, if I'm understanding right, the idea is that we would issue bonds later in the year so that, and go ahead and pay for these projects, where is that money coming from initially that we're going to pay for these projects at? Because I understand we're going to pay for them and then we're going to issue bonds later to pay for them, as well as to issue more money so that we can get a better rate by issuing more at once later. So where are we getting the money initially?
Okay. Good evening, Chair and the members of the committee and the Council Member Kelly. Yeah, so right now, what we have to do is, of course, until we issue the bonds, we use the fund balance in the CIP fund. And then once we issue the bonds, we reimburse ourselves out of the GO bond proceeds.
So why would we issue more bonds if we have it in the CIP, which is money I've pointed out earlier?
Right.
You know, we talked about this money we have. Then why are we going to issue more bonds if we have the money? Why are we going to issue bonds again for this when we're paying for, we have the money to pay for it now?
Well, I mean, we have the money. It is the cash, but it is already kind of encumbered for the projects, like maybe the bonds we issued last year or year before. And I think Lara provided you the whole list that, okay, this is our fund balance, and this money is identified for the following projects, which has already been approved by the council. This is just a stopgap arrangement. And why we issue the bonds later in the year, two things. One thing is so that we can make it a one bill, because generally every year we refund the previous year. Second thing is we try to kind of time that way so that we sell the bonds in August and close it on September 1st week. That's when we can refund the previous year bonds as a current refunding instead of advance refunding. If I issue bonds right now, say in next month or two, I would have to do advance refunding, and I might lose a substantial amount in the refunding savings.
It seems to me we've had millions and millions and millions of dollars sitting in bank accounts, that it would be better to issue bonds when we need it, rather, like now we're spending it, the money we have on this, as we should, and then just to issue bonds again to then probably likely, we've had millions of dollars just sitting in bank accounts for a long time. This isn't, to me, good financial, I'm sorry, but I just...
But that's why even right now, I mean, to your point, kind of, that we are delaying the bond issue. That's why it would be in September. We would close the bond, in the first week of September.
Right, but I don't think we should necessarily automatically say we're going to then bond out again this money that we spent on needed projects this year. And I also have a question about some of the money then that we want to bond out on, things like street patching. To me, capitalizing on these are not, this isn't the kind of work we should be capitalizing on, like street patching and paving. I mean, this should be in our budget, we shouldn't be capitalizing, paying for 20 years for street patching. Let me pull it up, but it just seems like there's a list of items on there that should not be projects that get capitalized on, that we pay for 20 years on a bond. Let's see. Like street patching, for example. To me, that makes no sense to be capitalizing on street patching. I mean, how often are we patching the streets? I mean, I don't mean like, we're not doing the entire town. I assume that every year we're patching some streets, right?
Hello, Council. My name is Laura Biggs. I'm a city engineer. I just want to answer Councilmember Kelly's question about how frequently we're patching the streets. So every year we're spending $600,000 to $700,000 on patching streets. Each street is generally only patched once through this contract, I believe, although this program's only been in place for about 7 or 8 years. Patching the street with these large-scale patches often extends the life of the street by 5 to 8 years without having to do a full resurfacing. So that typically has become a cost-effective way for us to manage the fact that we can only do full resurfacing on a limited number of blocks each year.
To your point, Laura, you just said that we spend on average, I don't know, $400,000 to $500,000 annually. This should be part of our budget, not something that this isn't a capital project. This should be included in we should not be paying interest for the next 20 years in order to patch our streets on bonds.
I don't disagree with you. I believe that would take approximately a 1 to 1.5% property tax increase in order to put into the budget. So a decision has been made. Or
appropriate budgeting, realizing that we need the money for this. Maybe we can't spend $7 million or $8 million on a pet, on an animal shelter. I mean, we just need to be a little bit more careful and savvy and disciplined about budgeting. If we budget every year $500,000 to $600,000 for street patching, this should not be bonded out, period. This is money that we need to figure and budget and then decide what we can spend and what we can't. This is something that we need. We need to patch streets. This is not something that should be capitalized. And there's other items in there as well. I'm very concerned about the budgetary discipline happening here where we're just bonding out on things that we should not be bonding out on and capitalizing and spending paying interest for 20 years on, like street patching.
So the list provided is the list that was adopted by the city council as part of the 2022 budget.
I had an issue before with this too.
All right, any other questions or discussion on this item?
And there are many items in here that should not be capitalized. I think we really need to look at our budget and decide what we have to spend money on annually. And then from there, decide if we can spend on the, other fancy projects. We have to scale back in these areas.
Any other questions or discussion around this issue?
Yeah, I don't have too much further for discussion or question, but I do just want to add that I agree with the with the sentiment of what Councilmember Kelly is saying. Really, I agree with a lot of what Councilmember Kelly is saying. In that Councilmember Braithwaite, you might want to mute. I do think that when it comes to capital improvements, our city's past practice of bonding out for all capital improvements is something that we need to wind down and begin to just budget for in the regular budgeting process whenever we can. There are some instances where bonding out certainly makes sense for certain projects, certain large projects, but yeah, I just want to add my voice to that and share that as a concern. And I could have sworn that during the budgeting process or during the last bond issuance with our previous city manager, that the discussion began. And I think there was the beginning of some movement there potentially, but I certainly want to see that followed through with, generally, I think these are all good projects. The stuff that, that we're working on now, as well as some of the things that were brought up just now during the discussion, I think are good, things that we need to do. Just we need to do it in the best way possible. So that's it.
And I'm not questioning actual projects listed. I'm questioning our budgetary practices here.
No. Any other discussion around this issue? What I will say is I too agree with the sentiment. My focus is on bringing all of these items, these types of items, to our Budget and Finance Committee moving forward. It is really difficult to follow these issues and know exactly how we should and should not be approaching it on the fly. And so, I'm a linear thinker. I need to work within a structured environment in order to understand these types of issues. And so I'm thankful that we created the Budget and Finance Committee. We, in fact, have a meeting coming up in a few days. And I look forward to, again, adding these types of concerns as discussions at future Budget and Finance Committee meetings. If we have no other discussion.
I have one more comment. I would just ask that we consider bringing this back so that we can look at, since there are many routine maintenance issues involved here in this list of what would then be bonded out. I would ask that before we issue bond for this, that we look at other projects, that are not absolutely necessary, like patching of roads. This is something we have to do, and look at if we can, in fact, then we don't need to scale back in some other areas so that we don't have to bond out on routine maintenance projects. Thank you.
Laura and Atesh, do we need to pass this today? Is there any urgency in this matter?
So, Councilmember Burns, just a clarification. This is not the approval for issuance of bonds. We will come to the city council sometime in June for the issuance of bond with the bond ordinance. This is just the reimbursement mechanism where Lara, if she starts working on a particular project, which is approved as a part of GO 2022 bond funding, we can reimburse ourselves. If we don't do that, if we spend some money, we won't be able to reimburse ourselves out of the 2022 bond issue.
Right, I understand that. I'm saying that going forward, before we issue bond money for routine maintenance projects, that we look at other projects that are not, absolutely necessary, like patching the street, and consider scaling back before, so that maybe we can avoid actually capitalizing on routine maintenance. I think we really need to bring an end to that.
And we can look at it, Councilmember Kelly, you're right. I think Finance and Budget Committee has decided to discuss the CIP funding in the month of March meeting. So obviously we will have a good discussion about that. Yes, a couple of options, particularly in light of the ARPA money. If the council decides even today that, okay, let's reduce our bond issue by X dollars, whether it's $1 million or $2 million, and let's use the ARPA money. Yes, we can use the ARPA money. These funds would become eligible under one of the categories.
Mm-hmm. So Hitesh, I'm asking you and the finance department to please look at that so that we are no longer capitalizing on things such as street patching. So that when we come back in June, or when we come back and look at if we need to issue a bond, that we avoid that at all costs.
This is where we need the more or less like a council direction, because as Lara mentioned earlier, this is the list of projects approved by the council. So obviously we have to follow that. Now, in terms of funding, if you decide otherwise, in particular for this year, let's talk about 2022. If the council decides and changes some form of funding, still keeping the project, but if you think that, okay, we think this 3 or 4 projects looks like a life of 5 years, 7 years, and let's use ARPA money or some other form of funding.
Or let's look at other projects where we're looking at, very fancy projects. Maybe we can't be quite as fancy. We need to scale back a little bit in some areas on other projects.
So I just want to be clear, Councilmember Kelly, is your desire to hold this item, or are you okay voting on it and your?
I'm okay voting on it. I understand that this is about an issuance of a bond going forward, and I'm asking staff to please do their best to come back with a proposal that does not include in the future, this summer, whenever we're going to be looking at, the potential of issuing this bond, capitalizing on routine maintenance projects.
All right, I think that has. Hitesh, we're going to move on. I think we've had a good discussion on it. I think the ask is clear, and as you stated, we have some upcoming Finance and Budget Committee meetings that will address this. But thank you for your comments, Councilmember Kelly, and for your quick responses. Do we have any other discussion on this before we move forward?
I'm sorry. I just have a quick question, and I won't go too deep into this, but I am just curious to be clear by, both this committee and the council adopting this resolution, and forgive me if I somehow missed this, this does not, this does not lock us in, 1, to bonding, but 2, does it lock us into coming up with it seems like the $10 million, almost $11 million in some way? Regardless of if we bond or not, do we have to come up, if we support this, do we have to come up with the money?
But we haven't.
No, this has nothing to do with this bond amount. As I said, we would come with the bond ordinance. That would include the amount again, the project. At that time, you can say, okay, let's issue X number of dollars of bonds and find the other funding from other sources. So this is just the procedural thing for reimbursing ourselves.
I will add that it's not uncommon, and one of the advantages of selling a bond later in the year, that if there are projects that appear like they will not move forward, that we can't be 100% clear even mid-year, but we can start reducing the bond issue, and what typically is several $100,000 less than what is stated at this time of the year. Just some natural, we can't get a project done for a variety of reasons.
Councilman Reed, you have the floor. Do you have any other Any other discussion?
Yeah, just to be clear, so we're spending 10 million, almost 11 million now. We are going to then come back at a later point and figure out how we're going to recoup the 10 million that we're spending. Is that a correct understanding, or am I completely missing the mark?
We, again, the Councilmember Reed and Lara can add after me, like think about what we call it a reimbursement resolution. What it does is, if Lara starts on one of the projects, say which is a capital project for 2.5 million, some design work, and she spends some money until we have the bond proceed, say 100,000. That 100,000 we can reimburse ourselves out of the GO bond, because right now we will pay out of our fund balance. So that is the only thing this resolution does. It does not bind the city council for a bond amount or bond funding amount, or whether you can change the funding later on. Yeah. Okay.
And it's not nor is it an explicit approval for any particular expense.
Well, I just want on page 6 where it says, City of Evanston 2022 Capital Improvement Program, 2022 GO Bond list of projects. So this does not lock us into having to bond for these projects like the one that I mentioned.
No,
Correct?
again,
Even though it's listed here on this page of this resolution. Oh no, this is the memorandum. Or wait, maybe it's the resolution. Yeah, it's the resolution. It's not going to lock to Devon's question. This will not lock us into that, correct?
no. It is just the listing which has been provided for the bonds approved as a part of CIP in 2022 budget adoption. But again, you will have to get a chance to look at it in terms of projects listing, as well as the bond funding when we come to you with the debt ordinance, the bond ordinance, yes, in June.
Oh, okay, thank you. And thank you both, Jonathan and Claire, for those follow-up questions. So I just, there was a particular wording that Claire used, so I just want to ask this question one last time to be very clear. So this list here that is included, all great important projects that need to be done at some point. By adopting this, we also are, just to be clear, we also are not giving express approval to undertake these particular projects. And I think I just heard you say that these projects were already approved in the budget for 2020, the 2022 budget. Okay, thank you.
So
okay.
each project is individually approved by the city council, and staff operates as if these projects are funded for this year with bond funding. So you will see come April and May, some projects that come saying that they're going to be using these bonds as funds, as a funding source. And so if you if you approve the projects and then you ultimately decide not to sell the bonds, then you would need to find another funding source for the already approved projects. But each project will have the opportunity to be approved individually by city council, just like always.
Great. Okay.
And on an individual basis.
And that makes a lot of sense, Laura. So what you're saying is essentially, no, these projects have not yet been approved already, particularly given that since we do our capital improvement, not part of a regular budgeting process through the bonding process, these have not yet been approved. And each one of these individually, I'm not going to count how many, but each one of these projects will come before us as an individual project that we will approve at some point.
Yes.
Whether it's but it has not yet happened.
Yes.
Okay.
Construction season in Illinois begins roughly in May, and we work towards that. The outdoor construction season, I should say. You will see some of these projects before we sell the general obligation bonds.
So in other words, some have been approved.
No, I think she said none of them.
You will see them for approval.
Okay.
Have not been approved, but some of these projects, if not all, have been identified, correct?
Yes.
Right. Okay. So that's just so we're all clear. It has not been approved by council. The projects are identified, but the source of funding. One moment. But the source of funding has not been determined yet by us. And I think what this allows, as it says, is going to 813. It's allowing us the ability to reimburse ourselves from the obligation bond. So that's my understanding. I think we're all clear on this. If there's one more question, ask it, but I think we're clear on this.
No, yeah, there's no further questions. I just did. Laura really provided some clarification there. I think there was a bit of confusion about whether or not these projects have previously been approved by the council, and the fact that they have not is reassuring that, you know, we'll have a chance to look at them each individually on a case-by-case basis and prioritize them, particularly in context of whether or not we need to bond out for them or not. So thank you for that clarification, Laura.
All right, so 813 has been properly moved and seconded and discussed. I'm going to restate the resolution just so we're on the same page. Again, item 813, resolution 4-R-22, expressing official intent regarding expenditures from the funds of the city of Evanston, Cook County, Illinois, to be reimbursed from proceeds of obligations to be issued by the city of Evanston, Cook County, Illinois. Can we have a vote on this, please?
Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
I'm sorry, I lost my place. Councilmember Braithwaite.
Aye.
Councilmember Nusma.
Aye.
Councilmember Burns.
Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
I'm voting no because I don't think we should be bonding out, but no.
All right. The motion has passed. This item has passed for consideration with one voting opposed. We are moving on to 814. Can someone move approval of 814?
Mr. Chair, I will move item A14, which is ordinance 1-0-22, amending city code sections 7-12-1 related to control of waterworks systems. Ordinance 7- city code section 7-12-4-2 related to installation and maintenance of service pipe from tap to fixtures. 7-12-4-3, replacement of iron or lead or steel service pipe when repairs or major renovations are required. 7-12-11, which is right of access inspections, repairs, and replacement. 7-12-14-1, wasting water procedure. 7-12-16-7, violations. And 7-12-6-3, setting, repairing, removing meters.
All right, 814 has been properly moved by Councilmember Nusma. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, seconded by Councilmember Reed. Any discussion? All right, seeing none.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I just want to clarify here that what we're doing here is just essentially cleaning up city code for a variety of reasons, just kind of doing some internal housekeeping. Is there anything really more to it than that?
Yes, part of it is that the state has adopted an act that requires lead service line replacement. So we are taking out the part where the city would offer loans or grants to replace lead service lines during water main projects, as the city will be replacing those as part of the project all the way to the house, pending the property owner's approval to do so. And it also clarifies that lead service lines cannot be repaired. They have to be replaced. And that's part of the ordinance modification as well.
Thank you.
All right, seeing no other council members requesting to speak, we will call a vote on this.
Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
Councilmember Braithwaite.
Aye.
Councilmember Nusma.
Aye.
Councilmember Burns.
Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
Aye.
All right, and the motion has passed. Again, 814 for consideration. Next up, 815. Can someone move approval of item 815, please?
Mr. Chair, I'll move approval of item A15, which is ordinance 8-0-22, amending city code section 3-4-60 to amend the allowed hours of alcohol sales for Class O liquor license holders.
All right, been properly moved. Item A15, properly moved by Councilmember Newsome. Is there a
Second.
seconded by Councilmember Reed? Any discussion?
Yeah, I'll just chime in. This particularly, if I'm not mistaken, there's only, and staff let me know if I'm wrong, I think there's very few, if not only one Class O liquor license in the city, and that belongs to a business in the 8th Ward. So happy to support this.
All right, seeing no other raised hands, we will call a vote on this. Thank you.
Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
Councilmember Braithwaite.
Aye.
Councilmember Newsome.
Aye.
Councilmember Burns.
Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
Aye.
All right, A16, A15 passed. A16, someone move item A16.
I will move item A16, ordinance 2022, amending the city code to increase the number of Class D liquor licenses to 63 for the 633 outpost Estacion at 633 Howard Street.
I will second that with a point of order, if I may. Item A16, as well as the following items through A21, are all recommended or requested for suspension of the rules for introduction and action at council tonight. So do we have to do anything special here at AP&W, or do we have to suspend the rules here, or we do that at council?
We don't have to suspend the rules here. This is maybe the one good time that rule does not apply to the committee because we determined that the council rules don't apply to committees. So that only needs to be done at council. Is my interpretation.
Councilmember Newsome, well, I get what you're saying, but separate from that, are we going to move these all together? Is that
that's where I was going? If we needed to suspend the rules, we could do that once and move them all together. But if we don't need to suspend the rules, it's kind of 6 of one and maybe 3 + 3 of another.
I concur with Councilmember Reed's assessment that we do not need to suspend the rules at the committee meeting.
Okay, so.
Okay, well, if we just want to take the roll call once, however, we could move these all collectively in one motion. That would save some time.
Yeah, you can take that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I'll amend. I don't know if there were, Councilmember Burns, I know we talked. Did you get the questions you had about A18?
Yeah, I was
19?
just gonna. I was still gonna ask you during discussion, even if we move them all together, we can still discuss them. So.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'll move them all. It doesn't matter. I will move A16. Well, if there's a difference of opinion that you had as a result of your questions, I wouldn't want it. But I'll move A16, 17, 18, 19, and 19, 20, and I guess 21 as well. So let's go back at that. A16 through 21. Am I correct in that?
Yes, and I will second that.
Yes.
All right. So the items A16 through A21 has been properly moved by Councilmember Reed and seconded by Councilmember Newsome. Any discussion?
Yeah, I just very quickly want to say, really excited about A16, Estacion at 633 Howard Street. That is the old outpost, the old Cafe Coralie. It is going to be turning into from my understanding, a Mexican restaurant. And so quickly Howard is becoming Evanston's destination for ethnic cuisine. So whatever you want, whether it's Caribbean food, Latin food, We got African food. You can come to Howard Street and enjoy that and have a glass of some kind of liquor and get inebriated as well and get an Uber home. So happy about this. Thank you.
It's dinner time, Councilmember Reed. You're making me hungry.
Any other discussion on these items?
I will share Councilmember Reed's enthusiasm and also express the same for Village Farm Stand in the 4th Ward on Davis Street. Great place to go shop for regionally raised and ethically raised produce, as well as very soon some alcoholic options.
All right. Any other comments? I did want to understand for Few Spirits, I think it is. They're requesting a license at a few different locations. I don't know if this same license is valid, for lack of a better term, at all locations, or if it's a separate license for each one. But I Googled it and I couldn't tell, are these newly established businesses at each location, or just trying to get a better understanding of the Few Spirits liquor license requests and what businesses they will operate under, and what is the business? Is it a restaurant? Is it a distributor? Is it I don't know if Mayor Biss or
Liquor Commissioner Biss is
Liquor Commissioner Biss or Attorney George on the line.
I believe Attorney Michelle Ozarico is on the line. Michelle, are you there?
Okay. I see Mayor Biss is also on the line, but Attorney Ozarico, if you wanted to speak to it, either one.
So I'll give my best understanding. We've obviously voted on this at the Liquor Commission. My understanding is that all of these new licenses are for facilities that are exclusively for storage. And they've been utilizing these facilities, and everybody kind of thought that the single license would work for all of the facilities because they're not producing or selling at the other facilities. It's just kind of a part of the same operation. And I guess what happened was the State Liquor Commission either changed their interpretation of their own rules or kind of discovered this was happening and realized it was problematic. And because the State Liquor Commission demands that they have all these different licenses with the state, one part of applying for that is you got to have a local license. And so it's not actually a change in what they're doing at all. It's just having a bunch of different licenses for the locations where they're storing their products.
Yep, that makes sense. Yeah, it was not obvious what was happening within the facility, so I wanted to make sure this wasn't some throwback bootlegging endeavor, right? Thank you for that. It's helpful. Any other discussion around this issue? All right. It's been properly moved and seconded and discussed. We can vote.
Councilmember Kelly,
Aye.
Councilmember Braithwaite,
Aye.
Councilmember Nusma,
aye.
Councilmember Burns,
Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
All right, that gets us through items for consideration. And now for our final item for discussion, APW1 sewer service repair costs. I'm sure we're going to have a presentation or a walkthrough on this item. But before that, we're going to take public comment from Francine. If Francine is still with us, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. I am still here. Thank you very much. I think many of you know my situation in November of last year. November of 2020, excuse me. I had a complete sewer failure. I had to repair the sewer where it connected to the main. I live on Elgin Road, which is actually Gulf. And in order to repair this, it cost me, the homeowner, $45,000, more than 10% of the value of my home. I had to have a certain type of plumbing company to do it because it was a very deep sewer main, like 15 feet or more, and it required stopping traffic for 2 days and my paying for that as well. And I've been asking the city and this committee and the city as well to have some sort of program to help residents in my situation. I'm not expecting anyone to pay for it all, but this is an extraordinary cost. If I picked up my house and moved it around the corner, it would probably be about a $10,000 or $15,000 bill at most. Still expensive, but not anywhere near $45,000. Back in March of 2021, Director Stonebeck presented a proposal to help people in my situation that was stalled for a while, and then I believe in September of 2021, this was asked for an analysis of the different the depth and the type of sewers in different areas, which Director Stonebeck has completed. I see his numbers on the report. And while the numbers look like there's a lot of sewers, obviously a lot of sewers that are at risk, what I think is important for this analysis is to look back, like perhaps 2, 3, 4, 5 years to determine how many people have actually been in my situation. This does not mean that all 49,000 sewers are going to have failures in the next year or two. We need to look at how many people have been in this situation in the past several years, and my guess is it's going to be only a few residents in my situation. Thank you. And please, I'm happy to answer any questions.
No, thanks, Francine. Appreciate your comments. Active Deputy City Manager Dave Stonebeck, would you mind walking us through the memo that you provided?
Yes, good evening, Committee. Dave Stonebeck, Interim Deputy City Manager. At the request of the committee, I generated a map to show locations where several different situations occur. The first is the light blue, are areas where the sewer is more than 10 foot in depth, but not on a high traffic volume street. The green area shows sewers that are 8 to 10 foot deep, but on a high traffic street. And then the dark blue are sewers that are more than 10 foot in depth and are also located on high traffic volume streets. And so the price ranges for those different types of situations is $15,000 to $25,000 for the lowest cost, $17,000 to $30,000 for the high, medium cost, and $30,000 to $40,000 for the highest areas greater than 10 foot.
Deputy Manager Stone, just real quick, just for clarification, what category does Francine fall under? Is it the
highest category,
yes,
where the sewer is more than 10 foot in deep and in a high volume traffic area?
And so that's represented by what colors, just so I'm clear?
The dark blue, which is the most expensive.
Okay.
Right. Mine was, it required a special plumbing contractor to do the work. A residential plumber can't do this. The type of equipment that was required is for a special, somebody who does commercial plumbing.
And to be clear, Deputy Manager, we have identified that it is both the depth and the volume of traffic that drives these costs primarily. The depth is the major factor, and whether it's in clay soil or sandy soil is another major factor. So anything east, generally speaking, east of Ridge Avenue is going to be in sandy soils, and that costs more money too, because you have to put shoring in to protect the excavation. And then traffic volume, if it's a state route or any high traffic area, we're going to require more construction traffic control, detour routes, and single lanes and arrow boards, and that cost can add up quickly as well. So each day you're out there, it might be $3,000 to $5,000 in traffic control. I'm sure we have.
I live on a state road.
And Mr. Stonebeck, this assumes a repair that requires excavation. Is there a significant cost savings if pipe lining technology is able to be used?
Yes, that would be true as well. But
In
if
my
the
situation,
sewer is to the state that Miss Allen's was, where there's a joint failure, then the lining cannot go through. So the pipe has to be in fairly good condition to be able to line.
Thanks.
Before we take any other questions, and I apologize for cutting you off. Do you want to walk us through anything else, Deputy Manager?
No, I don't. I was just trying to provide the additional information that you requested, sir.
So we'll open it up for discussion. Did we properly move this? Now that I think about it. Does anybody remember?
I don't think so. I can make the motion to discuss
Yeah,
item APW1 service or sewer service repair costs.
Second. All right, moved by Councilmember Nusma, seconded by Councilmember Reed. Thank you for that, Deputy Manager Stoneback. Is there any discussion?
So I agree with Miss Allen. And by the way, Miss Allen, you have a positively adorable dog.
Oh, I'm sorry. I knew he was going to bark the minute I started talking.
I wasn't referring to the barking.
No, I was. Thank you. That's why I picked him up.
So I agree that we should look at what other, residents have been impacted similarly.
Thank you.
I think it's absolutely worth our time to research this.
I can provide information that in 2021, there were 2 sewer repairs at the permit desk. The person seeking the permit indicated that the cost is over $25,000. So there were 2 in 21. In 2020, there were 3. And in 2019, there was 1. There were none in 2017 or 2018.
Oh,
and those are all $25,000?
They were, the estimated cost was over $25,000 at the time that they came in to request the permit.
And Francine, remind us one more time, what was the cost?
$45,000.
Right, that's what I thought.
45. Yeah.
I want to make sure.
25 sounds good now. Yeah.
Right,
It was 45,000.
Any other questions?
It's just unkind. Yeah.
Any other questions? Go ahead. I'm sorry. Was that Councilman?
No, I'm sympathetic to Ms. Allen's situation, but the flip side of this is, potential financial exposure for the city by, establishing a precedent where we'll help out homeowners who are incurring expenses, that are only related to their property. So it's a bit of a dilemma. I'm certainly sympathetic to Ms. Allen, but I'm sure we're all aware of the flip side of the argument as well.
Yeah, but is it really just related to my property? I mean, the part of my pipe that broke was over 15 feet below Gulf Road. I mean, yes, it's true that the resident owns the pipe from the house to the main, but I would bet 95% of the people in this community don't own a pipe that's deep, that is that deep under a street. So these are extraordinary conditions, as Director Stoneback just repeated. The amount of occurrences in the last 5 years have been 6, and those were over 25. I mean, we don't know exactly how much over, but this is 45. And I'm not here asking for anybody to pay it all. I'm just asking for assistance, as other residents in the city would need.
And before we get back to this particular case, I would like us to quickly revisit. I think it was a recommendation by staff at the September 27, 2021 APW committee meeting. Staff suggested and not a recommendation, that the best way to have a property owner become aware of this potential cost is to require the seller of a property to provide an affidavit that they have made the purchaser of the property aware of the location and depth of the sewer service for the property and the condition of the sewer service. This will require a city code modification to add language to Title III, Chapter 25, real estate transfer tax, to indicate that real estate transfer tax stamps should not be issued unless the applicant submits such an affidavit. If the new property owner is provided information on the location, depth, and condition of the sewer pipe, they will have the information that they need to make a determination about purchasing insurance for their sewer service. It should be noted that the location and depth of the sewer service is more important than the condition of the sewer. So I'm just curious if we can go around, what do we feel about that moving forward? And because I think in some ways, if we can agree that this is a good path forward, this will be a question for the corporation council. But if we make this change and make an exception, obviously, before we make this change, does that still, set us up for, does that still set bad precedent where we would have to, provide funding in future similar circumstances, or by making this modification to the city code after we've provided a support for Ms. Allen, that it would not set the same precedent and we would be protected in a sense.
I'll chime in if it's fine, Chair. My real consideration as far as the recommendation from staff that you just read from September, I believe you said, I would just want to know more about what it looks like on the seller side, on an Evanston resident who is looking to sell their house. I just want to see if this is some new burden that would be added that is a great burden. So I just want to get feedback from, whoever our real estate experts are on that. And then secondly, as to the point,
and Councilmember Reed, just briefly, just so I'm clear, you want just an opinion, someone's opinion on this, city staff's opinion on whether or not this will be overly burdensome, or is there another specific question that you want to answer?
I was sharing the same thought as Councilmember Reed. If I could just jump in here, like there's already a mound of paperwork that's involved when you sell a house, when you purchase a house, and I think what Devon is saying is, by including this requirement that we're contemplating here, is that an extreme burden on the amount of paperwork that's included or required, or is this just something that can be wrapped into the closing documents and not too big of an ask?
Quickly, real quick, City Manager Gandersky, I don't know if there is a staff that you would assign this work that could give us an opinion on this matter, or how would you guide us in trying to make this determination?
So essentially the question is just whether or not the council wants to be aware of what burden this would be on the homeowner. Is that what I'm understanding?
That sounds like it, yes.
We can refer this to finance and Ms. Flax's group to take a look collectively at that question and get back to you.
Okay.
Yeah,
Reed, you still have the floor. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I think particularly, I can reach out to folks that I know personally, but I'd love to hear, I don't know, if a realtor or someone who's in this space on a day-to-day basis. Staff is great, but this isn't quite their realm.
What, Mr. Stoneback, if I could ask, what would be required? What information would the homeowner have to obtain, and how much would it cost to obtain that information? Or is it maybe you've already done that work for them and it's in this map with the dark blue and light blue?
Again, I think that it would require the seller to hire a plumber to do a closed circuit TV inspection of the existing sewer service, not only to find its condition, but verify its location, because not all houses along Golf Road necessarily go out to Golf Road. Some of them may go north. Some may go into an alley or something like that. So one critical factor is to know where your sewer service line goes. The other one is to determine its depth. So as they're TVing or taking an inspection of the sewer, they could also verify how deep their equipment is into the ground. They can always contact the sewer division and get an estimate of the depth of the sewer that it's connecting to as well. So to me, that, it's hiring a plumber to do that inspection. I'm assuming it's around $3,000 to $5,000. I believe that a lot of homeowners require an inspection of their sewer service now prior to purchasing the home. But I don't believe that when they do that, they're provided the information as to where the sewer goes or its depth. They only generally tell you about the condition of the sewer.
And I had that done before I bought my home, and there was no problem. But so as a homeowner, how would I sell my house if I had to put paperwork in that said that if the potential buyer of my home should know that the sewer connects to the sewer main 15 feet under Golf Road, and the cost to repair that if it were to break, or if something were to happen, could be in excess of $45,000. Who would buy my house?
I think what we're hearing from staff is that then the recommendation would be to buy an insurance to cover the cost. Am I understanding that correctly, Deputy Manager Stonebeck?
Yes, there is insurance that's available for sewer service lines.
But it's very limited, and it typically has a maximum of about $10,000. I checked into it. It's very limited.
And can I just ask, Dave, is it standard with other municipalities? Is this the deal that homeowners have to pay this cost?
In the March memo that went out to City Council, I guess that would be before you were on, there was detail about what other municipalities do. The Northwestern Municipal Conference put out a survey. Some municipalities provide a minimum amount of assistance, but the vast majority do not provide any assistance at all. And their city code is similar to Evanston's, that the homeowner's responsibility is all the way to the connection of the city.
And how about Skokie and Wilmette?
Skokie is the same thing, where the homeowner is responsible all the way to the sewer main, and they do not provide any financial assistance.
What about Wilmette? I think my plumber had said that Wilmette does have a financial assistance program.
I would have to go back and check the March 27th memo. I don't recall Wilmette. I know Skokie because I lived there.
Yeah, but and again, Director Stonebeck's proposal is very reasonable, because it's not to repay the homeowner $45,000. It's based on income. It's based on the cost of the project and the homeowner's income level. So in my case, it might be a assistance of $10,000 from the city. It's not, again, residents are not asking for the entire bill, just some assistance with this, because it's a burden that has been extremely difficult for me to handle. And that's why I've been at all these meetings, because I just feel that this is something that's going to hit a lot more potentially more people, and break them.
Right. I agree. I think we need to move forward.
Real quick before we continue, I want to just clarify where we are. So right now, one of the questions that we want answered is for staff to determine the steps and costs to determine the depth. And it sounds like, reaching out to a plumbing company would need to happen, but we'll let staff make that determination. But again, we want to understand the steps and costs to determining depth. And also, look back at a previous memo to see if we can understand different municipal financial assistance programs related to this issue. And then also get some clarity around what the insurance costs would be to cover claims such as this, and also if it would cover this type of claim. Councilmember Reed, if you have anything outside of this, please, you have the floor.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think, again, I appreciate Councilmember Kelly's follow-up, and Newsom as well on this. I'd really just love to understand that cost, the new burden. So I'm sorry. I know this is just for discussion, so I'll just add that I really would love to see a program come back similar to what's just been discussed here, Ms. Allen and, it was presented by Director Stoneback. I think this is one of those, when it comes to providing, well, I guess it's just the sewer line, not the water line necessarily, but when it comes to providing, an essential service such as sewer services, I think it makes sense for that to be a communal effort in many regard where possible. I think, placing the burden on the homeowner for the part of the portion that is within their property line makes sense. I mean, we do have to share collectively the burden at some point, but certainly when we're talking about in the public way, again, I agree with Ms. Allen that in many cases we don't need to cover the full cost, but there should be some collective nature in such an endeavor. Particularly for, I'm thinking of, if Ms. Allen was a senior, I don't know how old you are.
I am 65.
Okay, well then
65, yeah, and I had to liquidate a life insurance policy to pay for this because there was no other way.
So, well, I think about folks who are seniors, like Miss Allen,
yes,
and other folks who low income folks. If this were to strike them, I just want to make sure that we're taking care of them as best as possible, and we're providing assistance where necessary. Particularly for something as important as sewer service and sewer service that is taking place in the public way.
Deputy managers, just so I'm clear, so with sewer replacement, it's not broken up like the water service line is, where you have a portion of it that the city is responsible for and the other the homeowner is?
That is correct. By city code and similar to most municipalities in the Chicagoland area, the homeowner is responsible for the sewer service all the way out to where it connects to the sewer main.
Okay.
I also want to clarify that the city does offer financial assistance for these type of repairs to the income qualified families already. That's already there. You have to submit a form and be reviewed, but that is something that Sarah Flax's team already provides.
Is this in CDBG areas or is this anywhere in the city?
It's anywhere within the city, I believe.
Okay.
but there's interest on it, right? So then you're actually paying back more than the extraordinary cost already.
So adding to our, if we can get some information at our next meeting then about the existing financial assistance program for qualified residents, we'll add that. And then also, again, a legal opinion of whether or not, again, my question is, if we provide a grant now, but modify the code after that, will we still be, liable to support? Will we still be on the hook in a sense to support other residents who find themselves in this predicament? So I would personally like to know that at the next meeting. Councilmember Newsome, you had, I think your hand up at one point, but I don't see it anymore. Do you have any?
I took it down. I have a sidebar question about sewers that aren't connected directly to the street, but through an extended lateral that may pick up 2 or 3 different houses before it connects to the street, which is not an uncommon occurrence. So it might not be deep. It might not be in a high traffic area, but it could be a really expensive and involve some neighbor negotiations, but I think that's probably beyond the scope of our discussion tonight. So I won't bring it up officially tonight.
We'll end with Deputy Manager Stoneback, but before we do, I'll take a little bit of a chair privilege, although we can mark it up as public comment. But Councilmember Fleming, I wanted to speak to this question. So to this item, Councilmember Fleming, you with us?
Thank you. I didn't focus on my text. So just real quick, I'll chime in here. I think this has all been great. I do have a resident who was in a similar situation. Her line went to the street, through a neighbor's yard, over to another street. And so, we went, and Mrs. Snowback's aware of this. We went through this back and forth. She was able to get a plumber to kind of help her without replacing the whole line. But when she thought the only option was replacing the whole line, she had no financial way to do that, right? And selling a life insurance policy seems like a horrible thing to have to do. So We did go back and forth trying to figure out, she was in the CDBG area, trying to kind of figure out everything we could do. And there was no recourse for her. And she is definitely concerned about how to sell her house moving forward, because she doesn't want to sell it and not disclose that this is where her water line does not go directly in front of the street like everyone else's. As Councilmember Newsom, you hit it on the line. She was concerned about her neighbors. There was a bunch of trees at the city, in the city parkway that impacted her line. And she was going to have to essentially tear up a whole corner of the street to get hers taken care of. So it is definitely an issue, to Miss Allen's point, past just one person. So I think you guys made some good suggestions for moving forward. And I do continue to get very concerned about our seniors or folks who buy these houses, assuming that the property, the water line goes into the front and it doesn't. I don't know how far back and what the legal recourse is. I would assume that as these houses are being built, and I realized it was a long time ago, the city did give some permission to put lines where they are, which was her point. Like, she didn't buy the house and decide to put the line 2 houses over. So, in these kind of real odd situations, I do think it would be beneficial for us to have some kind of program that we help. And Ms. Allen, I realize you don't love the idea of the program we have now where you get the lien against your property. I have seniors who also don't love that.
No, because
but even if we could figure out something like that for now and then go back once we had some other kind of program and kind of financially figure that out on the back end. I just know, I think of my neighbor who still has this kind of lingering over her head and her concern about trying to sell her house moving forward, what that means for the new owners.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I certainly would not want to lean against my house. Definitely not. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Okay, and then Deputy Manager Stoneback, I see your hand was up. Do you have any other remarks?
Yes, I'm only going to ask that you give us, not to the next meeting, but the meeting after that, to be able to prepare a response to all the various questions that were generated tonight. I'm not sure 2 weeks would be sufficient for us.
No problem at all. Any other comments, questions, or are we?
I just want to say, I think that because it's, this is tied to AMI, percentage of AMI, that I don't see any reason to delay much longer on this. I don't, even if there's more people involved, I just think this is what we're about, quality of living and people remaining in Evanston and not going broke because of a repair that needs to be done under the street in front of their home. So I see no reason not to move as expeditiously as possible on this.
Thank you.
And Ms. Allen, I just want to be clear, based on what I've heard and how I feel, we are, obviously all supportive and understand the precarious predicament that you're in, and we would, all be doing what you're doing if we were in the same boat. So I commend you on staying on top of this. I think at this point, some of the committee members have expressed just questions they have about this, and in particular, what we do moving forward as a city. So that it's much easier for us to wrap our head around how to support you and other residents who may have experienced similar circumstances. But we are paying attention to this. Hopefully you've seen some of the email communication from myself and others leading up to this meeting, but we've stayed on top of it and we will continue to. So thank you for showing up to the meeting, and we will be in touch about this matter very soon. Trust me.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And again, this is an issue that I want to fight for not just me, but for other residents in my situation.
Understand.
Thank you.
Okay. Seeing no other items on the agenda, we are going to adjourn this meeting, and we're going to start council.